All right. So our episode today.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
We always forget.
Okay.
All right. I'm Alexa,
I'm Amanda.
and this week's episode is
Welcome
about.
to Tata.
All right, I quit.
Tatas and tea.
I'm Alexa.
I'm Amanda.
Welcome to Tatas and Tea.
Made it.
Third time's a charm.
Always.
So National Coming Out Day is October 11th. So we're going to be talking about coming out. Everyone has like a different a different way that they come out.
Right. And different areas of your life that you come out in, because that's the thing about coming out is you don't just come out once. You have to come out over the course of your lifetime. You come out to your family, to your friends, maybe to your coworkers. But then, if someone hits on you at a bar or someone assumes that you're straight, it's like a coming out all over again.
Even the other day, we went to the fundraiser and it was like a random guy, and he's like, "Oh, the baby's so cute. Whose is it?" I'm like, "Both of ours." Just like random.
What did he do? What did he say? Was he like,
He was just like, "Oh, okay."
see, there you go.
But still, it's like you're coming out all over again,
Right.
like every time, because people just don't assume that.
Right. They always assume, especially with the baby.
Older people too.
Was he older?
Yeah.
Constantly coming out.
All the time.
And sometimes it's more difficult to come out in certain areas of your life than it is other areas. For me, it was really pretty easy to come out to my friends. I just kind of went to the bar and was like, I'm going to start dating women now. And they're like, all right. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, I kind of told the story of my mom, and she didn't take it poorly, but like it could have been better. I think she was just more surprised. But I'm not out at work. It's not that I'm intentionally in the closet at my job, but I work remote, so I don't really have the opportunity to discuss my personal life with my coworkers. If it came up, I don't know that at this point in my life I would hide it. But at my last job, I did have to hide it, or I felt like I had to hide it because I work in an extremely conservative environment. And my old boss would sometimes make homophobic comments to me, not realizing. We had this Pride Diversity Network at my job, so I did join that because in my yearly review, he was like, you should get more involved with the company and join something. So I was like, okay, I'm going to join this. But I joined it still without coming out. And I think he kind of put two and two together. And then he stopped making homophobic comments. But like he would always say things. So we were looking to hire someone. And I remember him saying something so messed up. And he basically said it would be a good diversity hire because he checked 3 different boxes for diversity. And I was like, and I'm not going to expand on that because it was really bad. But I was like, oof. And so that's why there was this fear. One of the secretaries I worked with was very, very religious. And I remember one time she made a comment to me about her son wanting to take dance classes. And she was like, well, what if he turns out, and she didn't finish, but I know where she was going. She was going to say, what if he turns out gay? And I looked at her and I was like, taking dance classes doesn't make someone gay. And I was like, and if that's how he turns out, it's not going to be because of the dance classes. Like, it's
Right.
just who he is. Like, I did actually end up coming out at that job, though. I came out slowly to a couple of my coworkers, and my ex had gotten me something, and it was like a quote, and it had like a little rainbow on it, and I hung it up on my office. And apparently my coworkers were talking about it because they saw it hanging in my office. So all my coworkers were talking about, oh my God, is Amanda gay? Because she has this thing and it has a rainbow and blah, 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 blah. And no one asked me. They just were talking about it amongst themselves. And so finally, when I told one person at work, one of the people at work, she was like, oh yeah, like so-and-so was talking about it because of the thing in your office. And I'm like, why didn't anyone just ask me? I would have, if someone had asked me.
Yeah, you would have said it.
I would have said it. But also at the same time, you can't just ask people why they're white,
Right. Yeah.
like you can't just ask people if they're gay.
I hate that. Like in my classroom, I literally had one picture. And it's of me and my co-teacher. So they probably think we're together.
Maybe.
But and then my mouse pad was my 2 cats.
Yeah.
Like literally nothing else. I didn't even have Kona. Like,
No?
or camera, nothing. Like, I don't want personal stuff. And some people used to make like, I swear, calendars, like their own pictures, like every month on their desk, and it's like of her and their like husband like making out.
Ew.
And like it's on their desk, and I'm like, what? I'm like, wow, I don't even have a picture of a friend,
Yeah.
or like of anything, like my wife or my kid. Like, I don't like being too personal
Yeah.
like that, but like my coworkers know everything about me.
Right.
So it's like, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah, I didn't have any personal stuff. That was like the one personal thing I had at work, and it caused such a commotion. And when I left my job, my boss was also retiring. So I went to his retirement party, and so everyone was talking about how I was leaving, and they were like, well, how are we going to stay connected? Like, are you on Instagram? Can I add you? And I was like, you can add me, but I'm just going to warn you, like, I don't think you're going to like what I post. And they were like, what are you posting? And I was like, well, I guess now's as good of a time as any, but I'm gay. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, since when? And I was like, I mean, the whole time I was like, yeah, I've been in a relationship with a woman for 4 years. And they were like, what? And I was like, mm-hmm. And they're like, we had no idea you were even dating anyone. Why didn't you say anything? And they're like, we wouldn't have changed the way we thought about you. And the thing is, I would like to believe that. But also at the same time, it's so hard when my boss was making homophobic comments, when the secretary was like making comments about her son maybe being gay. And also like it does change the way people see you as much as like they say it won't or you think it won't.
Especially if you're like the only person at your job who is gay.
Right.
Like,
no one else was out. It's hard when you work in a conservative environment because that's what my mom was afraid of when I came out. That's why she had the reaction she did, because she was like, I don't want you to tell people at work because I don't want you to lose your job. And
that's crazy that we have to think of that.
it's scary, and especially now.
It is and was scary.
Yeah. I don't know that I would have ever been in fear of losing my job. I did have a fear that people would treat me differently. And I can honestly say I've kind of kept in touch with those people since. Like, I was never really close to them. When I do hear from them, it's nothing negative. They are supportive and have been supportive. I don't feel like they've treated me really any differently, but it's hard to say because I'm not working there anymore. So maybe if I had continued working there,
It would have been.
it would have been different. But and that's why, not only do you have to come out different times of your life, but different areas. And sometimes you're safe coming out in certain areas. And sometimes like I just did not feel safe. And it wasn't just within my office, but I had to travel outside my office and work with people outside of my office on a regular basis. And those people that I worked with also made homophobic comments. I remember I sat in a room with all men. I was the only female, the only gay person in that room. And I had to listen to someone in a position of power make a gay joke that was in really poor taste. And all I could do was sit there because this person has a higher position than me. And I couldn't say anything because it was just not safe, I felt like, for me or for my job, because if I had said something that could have put my job at risk and it could have changed the way my job played out. And it was very, very difficult. So that's kind of why I just didn't feel safe coming out at work. And it's unfortunate. And my job now, thankfully, is a lot better. I know that I'm not the only queer person at my job, but the other queer person that I know exists is leaving. So I might be the only one left. I don't know. But again, we don't really talk about our personal lives, but I do feel a lot safer at this job. So I'm very thankful for that. But it just hasn't come up. But I don't think I'm at a point in my life where I would hide it like I did at my old job.
It reminds me a lot of me. Like at my job, 10 years ago is when I started teaching. I never said I was gay. I never wanted to let anyone know because I also work with kids. So it's a whole other issue, kids and parents, all of that. If their parent found out that they had a gay teacher, what were they going to say? So I never came out, but I did work with a co-teacher all year. We were awesome together. Like, it was the best class ever. And we went out to eat at the end of the year, at like close to the end of the year. And she goes, "Oh, Alexa, the cashier, he's really cute. Don't you think? I was like, yeah, he's okay. She's like, you're single, right? I'm like, no. She's like, what? You have a boyfriend? I said, no. I have a girlfriend. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I have a girlfriend. I forgot how long we were together, like over a year. And at that point, and she's like, no way. I would have never thought. She goes, but then something like in the back of my head said, you probably were a lesbian just because you never talked about guys.
That's a fair
But I
point.
never talked about girls.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it was just never brought up. But she's like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me, but I just didn't know. Like, you know, so that's how she found out. So I wasn't friends with like anyone on Facebook or social media from work because I didn't want them to see anything. So my one coworker came up to me and was like, I heard the kids saying like you're a lesbian. And I said, like, really? I said, how, what do you mean? And she's like, is that true? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I am. And she's like, I think it's from Facebook, on your Facebook. Like, I said, really? She's like, I think they could see it. So I said, we're not friends on Facebook. I said, go on my Facebook right now. And she did. And she's like, I can't see anything because everything was like super private. You could just see like the profile picture, which was just me, I think. And she's like, yeah, you can't tell anything. But it was like a big thing. She's like, just make sure everything is private and no one could see anything. It was like so strange because I was like, I never even came out, but like people are making all these assumptions and making me feel uncomfortable about my own social media, which is not even out there. Like no one could see anything. So that was at one point during the year. And then at the end of the year, we were on a field trip and these other teachers, different ones, they just pulled up their phone. I think we were friends on Facebook at this point. And they saw a picture of me and my ex. And it was like a picture like of me. I think if me and you took a picture right now and posed, we would look closer than me and my ex did in the picture. Like if I put my arm around you, we'd look closer. So they showed this picture to me and they're like, who is this? And I was like, my girlfriend. And they're like, oh, we thought so because you're too close in the picture.
What?
Yes. And I said, oh, I was like, really? I'm like, it's just a normal picture. But yeah, that's my girlfriend. And then they asked me like 1,000 questions or like, would you ever have kids and who would have the kid and how would that work and this and that. I'm like 22 years old, 21, 22. I don't even know how old I was then. And I'm like, seriously? I'm like, number one, at 22 years old, I'm not thinking about kids.
Right.
And definitely not with that person. Definitely not with her. Definitely
red
not.
flag.
Total red flag. But I was like, what? Like it was just so strange.
I feel like people think that they're entitled to know things about your life if your life looks different than theirs. Mm-hmm. But that's crazy that they asked you all these questions. Mm-hmm. Like,
and this was 10 years ago, and it was so weird.
I wonder if they would do that to this day because now it's like not an appropriate thing to do. So I wonder if that's still something they would do.
I feel like they would just because of who they are. Also that year, one of my friends, their son was in that grade at my school, and he grew up around me, like with my exes or just in general with his moms, and he knew that I was gay, but I think he just thought it was normal. So he could have been like, oh,
is that why you think the person came up to you?
That's what I think. I don't think it was social media related. I think it was because of him, but I don't think he was starting rumors. I think it was just like a normal thing.
Which it should be.
Yeah. So the kids, like friends or whatever, like the kids knew, and they would like write on the desks like that I was a lesbian. Like Miss whatever is a lesbian. Yeah, like all over the desks, all over stuff. Like that was my first year of teaching.
Horrible.
It was just horrible. And what year did I get married? 7 of teaching? I forget. They knew that I was getting married, the kids. And she was like, oh, do you want to make cards? Like, like congratulations. So they're like, oh yeah, who is she getting married to? What's her husband's name? So she was like, well, it's a woman. And they're like, oh, really? Okay. So then they were like Mrs. and Mrs. and whatever, like instead of Mrs. and Mr. and Mrs. So when I came back, I got all these cards and like posters and like it all had that on it. But at that point, people were fine with it. But like I never, ever told anyone.
It's crazy how different things are from even just 10 years ago. I hear from older people all the time, people weren't gay when I was younger. And it's like, they just weren't out about it, And so I think we've come such a long way since it was made legal and more people feel comfortable being out. So there's more acceptance. There's still a lot of intolerance and ignorance out there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still a scary world.
It is.
Even when I was younger and trying to come out, which was not that long ago since I'm a late in life lesbian.
You weren't cutting out boobs from magazines when you were younger behind a curtain?
I was not doing that. I was wishing that I was a boy so I can hold my crush's hand and kiss my crush, not realizing what gay was, which is actually funny because growing up, I didn't know gay existed. Like, it just wasn't a thing.
No one talked about it.
No one talked
No
about
one.
it. And I don't even know when I realized gay was a thing. But that's when I was like, oh, you learn what gay is and it changes things. But I think this confusion made it really hard for me to come out because I had been with a guy for so long and I did really love him and care about him. But it just felt different than what it feels like for me being with a woman. And I think knowing that I had been with a guy, I really struggled with my sexuality. And then also, you know, when I was trying to come out, I was in a relatively conservative environment. I remember there was this one girl, she was an out lesbian, and someone I know was like, everyone thinks I'm a lesbian, but that girl's a lesbian. I think that girl thinks I'm a lesbian, but I'm not. And like, she's always trying to get close to me, and just like homophobia, I was still surrounded by it. So when I tried to come out, I was kind of met with this homophobic response of like, oh, I was like, oh, okay, maybe now isn't the time to come out. And I was already on a dating app, a lesbian dating app, and I've been talking to this girl. So I'm really overwhelmed because I'm talking to a girl for the first time. And at the same time, my friend is like seemingly making fun of me for it. And, you know, asking me, because I had told her I was talking to this girl, and she was like asking me what was going on in the conversation. And I told her like what was happening. And she was like, oh, I want to see. And I was like,
No,
this
you
is really
don't.
weird. Yeah, I was like, this is really weird. And she was like, no, come on, come on. And so she was like, oh my God, what are you going to say back to her? And she like was very invested, and she would like laugh about it. So to me, it felt like she was like making fun of me.
Right.
I felt like really weird, and I was just like, okay, this is not the time to come out. So I'm just going to kind of slide back into the closet. And so I did.
Usually in situations like that, it sounds like the person or your friend was technically like probably in the closet herself and trying to like mask it. For real, like she probably is in the closet and is just scared to come out and is very curious of what you're doing.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the vibe I got as well. And if there's one thing I've learned, and it's very unfortunate, it's that the more homophobic someone is, I feel like the more gay they probably are. And it's just like they're externalizing their internalized homophobia. Like they hate themselves as a gay person, and then they just kind of make other people feel bad about it. And it's also this, like, in my mind, this idea of like they're jealous that you're able to like come out and live your authentic life, and they can't do that. And I think that part of the reason people have such a hard time living their true authentic lives and coming out is because there is a fear of what your friends and your family are going to think.
From our personal experiences, you know, it wasn't easy. One of my exes, she wasn't out to her family. And one day she came over with like a big garbage bag, like a big black garbage bag filled with like clothes, and was like, look, I'm going to come out to my family. They're not going to let me stay at my house. And she's like, could I just stay here until I figure out what to do? I'm like, I guess. Like, and I think I told her, I was like, yeah, you have until like the weekend or like next weekend to like figure it out, because I'm like, I don't want you moving in. We just met.
No U-Haul on the second
No
date for
U-Hauling. And then part of me was like, is she lying? Is she, like, she just wants to move in. But she really didn't tell her family. And then she did. And it was really bad. And obviously they didn't want her to come back. She stayed with me for a little bit. And then I think she moved in with one of her aunts. I never dated anyone who wasn't out. So it was like a little bit different. And like, to me, it was like weird because like normally, well, not that soon, but you would meet like family members eventually. And I would never have been able to meet her family or any of that because of that if we were together for a while. Yeah. So I think like part of me was like, I don't want anything to do with that. But also that wasn't even just it. She was just a little crazy.
Too many red flags.
Yeah, a lot of red flags. And this time I didn't jump on them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And unfortunately in that situation, I think that's a situation a lot of people kind of think or expect. I'm going to come out to my family, they're going to disown me, and that's going to be it. And unfortunately, in her case, that seems to be kind of what happened. And that is going to happen. But from a lot of the experiences I've heard from people who have thought that was going to happen, that isn't what happened. A lot of people have a fear of their family disowning them, but then their families take it better than expected. My ex also wasn't out when we first met. For me, coming out was such a big, scary thing that I had to do. And I felt, and I just didn't want to be someone's secret. I just didn't want to have to go back into the closet because it was such a difficult thing to do.
I think I felt the exact same way. And I just like put like a wall up. I was like, no, done.
Right.
Because you don't want to feel that way.
Because you don't want to feel like a secret, or it's like you have to come out all over again. And you have to also deal with your emotional turmoil when you come out. But when you're with someone who's not out and then they come out when you're together, sometimes you have to go through that all over again with that person. When I started dating my ex, she wasn't out, and I made it very clear, I will not be your girlfriend if you're not out. And I told her, you don't have to come out. That is absolutely your choice. But like, I will not pursue anything with you because that's my choice. And that is perfectly fine and perfectly reasonable. It's perfectly reasonable if she decided to never come out. And it was perfectly reasonable for me to not want to be with someone who wasn't out, but she did come out. It didn't go super well. She did not forewarn me she was going to come out. Her parents were just not super supportive. They did eventually come around, which is good, but she still had so much internalized homophobia while we were dating that she never dealt with. And a lot of the residuals of coming out and her parents taking it the way that they did, that was never dealt with either. Like, there was a lot of that severely impacted our relationship. It was hard. It was hard for me to watch her go through that, someone I cared about and loved going through it. And I was there for her and I supported her, and it was very hard. But for me now, it was so emotionally taxing the first time I came out to go through that. It was a lot to go through that process with her. I'm personally at a point where, like, again, the same rule, I won't even start dating someone if they're not out. It's just, I can't do it. And that's a perfectly fine thing to say. I do know other people who are in relationships, who have been in long-term relationships with people who aren't out, or like they're only out to certain people. And that's also perfectly fine. We all have our preferences, and we are all allowed to have like our different views on this.
I think it's based off of everyone's personal experiences too.
Right.
Like, I feel like it's just too emotionally exhausting to go through something like that. And I wouldn't want to do it either.
Right.
I feel like when you're younger, maybe it's not like, especially if you're not looking to like seriously date somebody, it is what it is, like just casual dating. That's different. But when it comes to meeting families and friends and all of that, then that's when you think about like everything that you've gone through with your own family or with other stories of friends that you've known.
Right.
And it's like, I don't even want to deal with that.
Right.
You have like, it has to be worth it, or just don't even deal with it at all. And it sounds bad, I feel like if you're like, oh, you're not an out lesbian to your family, you're out. But it's because of things that we've been through. And
right. Yeah, I was actually talking to my therapist about this because we were talking about my deal breakers. That is one that came up, is I wouldn't date someone who isn't out. And I remember saying to my therapist, like, I feel really bad about that, or it feels wrong to almost say that. Like you said, it doesn't sit right. And my therapist was like, I mean, it makes sense after what you went through that like you wouldn't want that for you now. And I didn't necessarily feel like quite as strongly. Like, yeah, when I dated my ex, I was like, hey, I'm not going to get into it with, I'm not going to be your girlfriend if you're not out. And back then that was also still reasonable, which I've also learned from therapy. But like, I was open to dating people who weren't necessarily out. It's just like I wouldn't get serious with them. But now it's a different story, but it's because, like you said, of your past experiences, some things, and that's why all of our deal breakers are so different because if you've been burned in the past, it's really hard to come back from that and like go through something similar again.
Yeah, like you've gone through your own personal experience, traumas from you coming out like however many years ago, and to bring that all back up again, I would never want to do that.
Yeah.
Like at this point.
Well, and that's what it was, is like when I was with my ex and she came out to her family, it brought back all of these feelings for me. And because she wasn't going to therapy herself, she was leaning very heavily on me for the emotional support. And as her partner, I wanted to be there for her and support her, but it was also still emotionally taxing on me as well. And, you know, maybe the situation could have been different if she was going to her own therapy and having those, you know, traumas really resolved from her childhood and from coming out and working on that. But that's not what the case was. And it
you
just
were
kind
pretty
of
much like her therapist.
Yeah.
And that's a lot on somebody.
It is. It's a lot.
Yeah. And we're older, and I mean, looking for different things, and you don't want to start from square one all over again.
Right.
Like that's, in my mind, that's how I feel like it would be.
But I think the important message is, right, you're allowed to have, when it comes to dating and stuff like that, you're allowed to have these deal breakers or these boundaries, but you are also under no obligation at any point in time to come out. You don't have to come out to anyone. It's up to you. It's a choice you need to make. And you're also allowed to only be out in certain areas of your life. Like I said, I wasn't out at work for the long, and I'm not, but I'm out in other areas of my life. And that's fine too. You just have to find what works best for you. And I think that's the message of National Coming Out Day is it's up to you whether or not you want to come out and where you want to come out and to whom you want to come out and how you want to come out.
You don't owe anyone anything.
Exactly.
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
But if you do choose to come out, there's a huge community of people that will be there for you and support you. And one good thing about coming out is, you know, you find your own family in the LGBTQ community. So, you know, you're able to form your own family and form these connections with people who have similar experiences. And there's so many different coming out stories and experiences that I'm sure you're going to find one that maybe it's not exactly the same, but someone who can help you get through a difficult coming out time for you. And if you haven't heard our coming out stories, we talk about them in episode 1. If you want to go ahead and give a listen. And if you like what you hear there and you like what you hear here. If you like what you hear, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are also on TikTok and Instagram, Tatas NT Pod. And if you have any questions, want to submit a story, have a topic you want to hear, just DM us or email us at tatasnt@gmail.com and we will get to your topic. We've had a couple suggestions come through now that one of which we covered and one we will be covering soon. So we are always open to suggestions. Peace out.
Listen up, fans, we're Tatas and Tea, where we turn our traumas into comedy. But we're here for some fun to retell our life tales, from hilarious dates to epic fails. You want some advice, just ask away, but we'll share our opinions either way. No problems too big, no questions too small. With Tatas and Tea, we'll cover it all.